Replacing a frontman usually spells disaster for a band, but sometimes losing a singer sparks reinvention, confidence, and unexpected success. In this video, I'm once again looking at 10 bands who changed their frontman or a crucial member, and instead of fading away, they became bigger, stronger, and more influential than ever before us. When I look at Judas Priest's earliest days, I see a band barely hanging on in Birmingham, packed with ambition but going nowhere fast. Al Atkins was there from the start, even naming the band, yet by 1973, reality hit hard. He got his girlfriend pregnant and decided it was time to get a haircut and find a real job. That exit could have ended everything. Instead, fate stepped in. Bassist Ian Hill's fiancée suggested auditioning her brother, a singer named Bob. Within months, Bob became Rob Halford, and the transformation was immediate. His range, power, and confidence gave Judas Priest a voice that sounded larger than the clubs they were playing. Less than a year later, they had a major record deal. Albums like Sad Wings of Destiny and British Steel didn't just elevate the band, they helped define heavy metal itself. With him, Judas Priest became metal icons. Little girl, she's on my mind. No doubt about it, she looks so fine. She's the best girl that I ever had. Early Deep Purple are often forgotten, and I think that says a lot. Early Deep Purple is like a band still caught between worlds. With Rod Evans on vocals, they leaned towards psychedelic pop, even scoring a hit with Hush, but the sound never hinted at the heavy force they would become. That changed in 1969 when Evans was replaced by Ian Gillan. The shift was immediate and unmistakable. Some stupid with a flare gun, burn the place to the ground. Gillan's voice was louder, sharper, and fearless, pushing the band toward a harder, more aggressive identity. The album In Rock sounded like a declaration, as if Deep Purple had finally decided who they were. Then came Machine Head, and with it, Smoke on the Water, a riff so iconic it practically defines rock guitar. Before Gillan, Deep Purple were another late 60s rock act. With him, they became global hard rock giants, filling arenas and releasing one of the most celebrated live albums ever, made in Japan. It was transformation for them. Listening to Faith No More before Mike Patton feels like hearing a band full of ideas but lacking control. The Chuck Mosley era had attitude, funk, and chaos, yet it felt unstable and unfocused. Everything changed in 1988 when Patton arrived from Mr. Bungle. His range was shocking. Melodic crooning, manic screams, irony and precision all in one voice. Suddenly the band had direction. Their first album together was The Real Thing and went platinum. It pushed Epic into the American top 10, something unheard of for a band this heavy and strange. Faith No More moved from sweaty clubs to MTV rotation, major tours, and Grammy recognition. What matters most to me is that Patton didn't dilute their weirdness. He sharpened it. Before him, Faith No More were a cult band flirting with collapse. With him, they became crossover innovators who proved that experimentation and mainstream success could coexist. Did you know that Dream Theater's original singer, Charlie Dominici, was nearly 15 years older than the rest of the band and came from a completely different musical background? When I listen back to those early recordings, that mismatch is easy to hear. The musicianship was already pushing boundaries, but the vocals felt anchored to an earlier, more traditional rock style. When James LaBrie joined in 1991, everything finally locked into place. His range and power, as well as dramatic delivery, gave the music scale and emotional weight. Images and words didn't just succeed, it redefined what progressive metal could be. Pull Me Under. Breaking through on radio and MTV was unheard of for a band this complex. What matters to me is that Dream Theater didn't simplify their ideas to grow. They found a singer who could rise to them. Before Labrie, they were a talented underground band. With him, they became global pioneers. When Ozzy Osbourne was fired from Black Sabbath in 1979, many journalists openly wrote that the band was finished. They argued that Ozzy wasn't just the singer, he was the symbol of everything Sabbath represented. Replacing him felt unthinkable. But when Ronnie James Dio joined, the band didn't try to recreate the past. Instead, they reset completely. Ronnie brought precision, control, and a powerful vocal range that pushed the music in a darker, more focused direction. Heaven and Hell sounded sharper and heavier than anything Sabbath had released in years, and it sold exceptionally well on both sides of the Atlantic. What stands out to me is how confident the shift feels. This isn't a band clinging to survival. It's a band rediscovering purpose. Ozzy created the chaos that launched Sabbath. Dio gave them discipline and longevity, proving the band could thrive beyond its original frontman. Van Halen's shift from David Lee Roth to Sammy Hagar is one of the most debated changes in rock history, and that's exactly why it belongs here. Roth was pure spectacle, unpredictable, flamboyant, and iconic. When Hagar joined, the band didn't collapse. They streamlined. The music became more polished, more melodic, and undeniably more commercial. Giving Eddie Van Halen space to expand his songwriting. Album after album hit #1. Arena crowds grew larger. Tours became smoother. Radio embraced them fully. While some fans missed the chaos, there's no denying the numbers. This version of Van Halen dominated the charts throughout the late 80s and early 90s. What I find interesting is that success came not from replacing personality, but from replacing volatility with consistency. It didn't erase the past. It created a parallel legacy that still divides fans today. When Ronnie James Dio left Rainbow in 1979, it felt like the band had lost its soul. Dio's voice and fantasy-driven lyrics had defined Rainbow's early identity. On albums like Ritchie Blackmore's Rainbow and Rising, it had turned them into a cult favorite among hard rock and metal fans. Later that same year, Graham Bonnet stepped in and shifted the band's direction. Their first album, Down to Earth with Bonnet, marked a clear pivot toward tighter, radio-friendly hard rock. Songs like Since You've Been Gone and All Night Long brought Rainbow their biggest chart success, especially in the UK and across Europe. What stands out to me is how deliberate the change feels. Dio made Rainbow epic and theatrical. Bonnet made them immediate and accessible. Both approaches had value, but only one connected with a much wider audience at that moment. Rainbow didn't fade after Dio left. They briefly became more visible than ever. Up to this point, I've been talking about singers. From here on, it's different. Rush didn't replace a frontman. But when Neil Peart replaced John Rutsey, everything changed. It was just weeks before their first US tour in 1974. Peart didn't just sit behind the kit, he reshaped the band's intellect and ambition. His lyrics introduced philosophy, science fiction, and introspection into rock music at a time when few bands dared. The band became tighter musically, more adventurous, and more fearless. Albums like 2112 and Moving Pictures wouldn't exist without him. Before Peart, Rush were a promising hard rock trio. With him, they became one of the most respected and enduring bands in rock history. That's why this change belongs here in this list. It wasn't a frontman change, but it was a full makeover by Sometimes the most important voice in a band isn't the one singing, it's the one defining what the band stands for. The loss of Hillel Slovak nearly ended Red Hot Chili Peppers. He was central to their early sound and chemistry. When John Frusciante joined, the band didn't just recover, they evolved. Frusciante brought melody, restraint, and emotional depth that balanced the band's raw energy. Blood Sugar Sex Magic marked the turning point, transforming them into global stars. What strikes me is how Frusciante's playing gave the songs space to breathe. The funk remained, but now there was vulnerability and warmth. Before him, the Chili Peppers were explosive but inconsistent. But with him, they became timeless. This wasn't about replacing a personality. It was about finding the missing emotional core. Frusciante didn't just change how the band sounded, he also changed how they connected with people. His arrival helped the group mature, write stronger songs, and survive fame without losing their original identity during the turbulent 90s when pressure nearly destroyed them. Almost completely. On your shirt sleeve, coming down, more coming to believe. Scorpions are a perfect example of how identity can solidify over time. Early on, the band went through multiple lineup shifts and stylistic changes, but once Klaus Meine became the clear vocal focal point, everything aligned. His voice was melodic, emotional, and instantly recognizable, and became the anchor around which the band's global success formed. Albums like Love Drive, Blackout, and Love at First Sting pushed Scorpions into stadiums worldwide. In place, the band finally had a consistent identity that translated internationally. This isn't a story of survival, it's a story of focus, and sometimes that's exactly what makes a band explode on a global scale. By the early 1980s, their sound and songwriting were unified enough to dominate radio, MTV, and massive international tours. That clarity turned Scorpions from a respected European act into one of hard rock's most reliable global hitmakers. And that's all for part 2. Sometimes it's a new voice, sometimes it's a new mind. Which change do you think mattered most? And did I still miss bands? Let me know in the comments, okay? If you enjoy these rock deep dives, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stick around for more stories from music history. Your